Hello, everybody. Wake up. It's New Year's. And welcome to the PHLY Eagles podcast. Bo Wulf, Zach Berman in Studio B. Nice and comfortable setting here as we prepare to talk about everything going on with the Eagles. We are going to dive headfirst into the Nick Sirianni question. Maybe we'll get to a little bit of A.J. Brown discussion later. Zach, how are you?
Doing well. Excited for the show.
Excited for the show too. I gotta start. I gotta apologize. I was thinking about the New Year's thing.
I've been working with you for 5 years. This is the first time I've heard you say
I don't
gotta
think that's
apologize.
True. But I kind of like. I think there's a sweetness to the waking up the kids.
Thank you.
To wish them happy.
Yes.
To wish them happy New Year. I think that's a nice to make it a little special thing.
Yes.
I'm still a little bit confounded about like how you were allowed to wake up your wife in the middle of the night and say Happy New Year's.
Yeah, so was she. so she watched that back and she said she's on Bo's side on that. But look, I want to create memories, right? And that's essentially there's only New Year's Eve to New Year's Day, 2003, 2004, 2023, 2024, once in your life. So I want to mark that occasion appropriately.
I mean, there's only like January 3rd, 2024 once in your life too.
You know what I mean, though. Yeah, yeah. I can tell you where I was for.
But don't you think that memory for Emily will be like, why are you doing this? Let me sleep.
Sure. But like I will quiz her sometimes. Do you know where we were New Year's Eve, 2017? Do you know where we were New Year's Eve, 2019? And she doesn't keep track of that the way I
It's
do.
funny because I feel like for most things you are not sentimental. You are.
That's not a matter of being sentimental.
But
that's
so
a matter of being.
New Year's specifically is a weird one for you to sort of glom onto. I feel like
It's not a matter of sentimentality. It's I like optimistic holidays, right? Okay, or optimistic occasions.
Okay.
And this is like I think by definition, almost New Year's is a sense of renewal, right? So there's excitement, there's optimism.
it's interesting. I've never met like a New Year's person, like a
yeah.
there are Christmas people and Thanksgiving people and July 4th people. I don't know that you're the first New Year's.
Oh yeah, Thanksgiving, New Year's, July
fetishist
4th.
that I've found.
Those are some of the, I wouldn't say fetish, but but no, I'm much more, for instance, like New Year's Eve than Valentine's Day. You know,
I mean, tough beat for Emily. Like
she's just fine. Yes.
So what are the other optimistic holidays? Birthdays?
Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Right. It's a day
Time
of
of reflection. Yeah.
Sure. I think July 4th is an optimistic holiday.
Yeah. It's my anniversary, so it is for me.
There you go.
But yeah.
Exactly. So now Claire, who watches us every day, says New Year's Eve is totally overrated. Claire, I understand where you're coming from, but I disagree. It's a sense of renewal. There's college football on. Back, I mean, this year there was football on, but there used to be the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, which was always an underrated bowl game and it was played on New Year's Eve. So you'd be going to those New Year's Eve parties, and I would want to know what's going on with like the third place team in the ACC and the third place team in the SEC.
And so when you are having these pop quizzes with Emily in the middle of the dinner table on on an April, and you say where were we on New Year's Eve 2016, the second question is who won the Peach Bowl?
That's not the second question, but she could probably ask me that on some of them. But I can tell you where I was for most of these New Year's Eves. Yeah.
Okay, 2015.
2015 New Year's Eve, Emily and I went out to dinner. And yeah, we went out to dinner on New Year's Eve.
In Philadelphia?
In Philadelphia, yes.
Okay, and she would remember that?
Yeah, she would.
Unlike Julia, who does not remember going to dinner with you in Hoboken.
I didn't know this was going to be the start of the show. But anyways, much to discuss today.
Okay, let's get into it. I think this is the the national football zeitgeist conversation now is Nick Sirianni safe? Is something crazy going to happen here? We talked about it sort of a month ago. I don't know if you wanted to do your whole thing here,
I will.
But go ahead.
Please. So a month ago, coming back from Dallas, and we'll be transparent with the audience. We've been doing this now for 5 months. Let's we're all part of this great community here. I get back from Dallas. I come here and
straight from the airport. Haven't seen your family yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, run
Correct.
down ragged. I was listening to a bit of the podcast.
Okay.
You had like an hour and 40 minutes of sleep.
Yes. And we did not like discuss what the show was going to be. Most days we kind of have an idea of, all right, this is what we're going to get into. We'll trade topics. I'll text you in the morning. You'll text me the night before. Things like that of different things. The game was raw. Emotions were high from the Eagles, right? And so you're just going to talk about this game. So
Back-to-back blowout losses.
So I come straight here, and Julia, our outstanding. She's more than a producer, but she produces the show here.
Dinner companion.
High school, middle school, good friend. Yeah. So she puts the link for us to share, and the headline in the link said "hot seat?" ? And I did not like that headline. And I said something at the time, and you were kind of like, it's one show. We have a question mark there, right? We don't have to get into the whole conversation. But I remember when I got home.
It was also like 20 minutes before the show.
Yes,
It's not like we can go
Yes.
change the headline
Yes.
right away.
And I remember when I got home that night, I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? I really don't think this is I didn't think that was a responsible conversation. I thought the Eagles were 11-3. They were in the Super Bowl last year. To talk about hot seat, I thought it was a little hot takey at the time. Okay, and so we had a good conversation about it. But the great thing about Bo, well, there's many great things about Bo, but as a reporter, Bo is very adept at seeing things around the curve and being. So we were. I'm not now. We're going to get into the merits of that topic, but as I was driving in this morning, as I was literally listening to Nick Sirianni on the radio yesterday, this is a topic of conversation. Adam Schefter today on he addressed like he said Nick Sirianni's safe. Like this is a topic of conversation. Our comments on the YouTube pages is about Sirianni. We're getting messages about it. So you were right. And the way you framed it, I want to be fair. The way you framed it's not, is he on the hot seat now? It's, if this collapses. If this collapses, their first round.
We said if they go 2-2 over the final four and lose in the first round, that was basically the
yes.
And already they are 1-2, and
yes.
Facing that possibility. And so the conversation was more if things get terrible, and things have gotten pretty bad. And the irony is not the right word, but the funny twist to that conversation and the timing of it is you go back. That was the Monday or Tuesday after the Cowboys game. That is the day that Nick Sirianni would have let Sean Desai know that he is not the defensive coordinator anymore, and he is giving the responsibilities to Matt Patricia. So it was like a time of upheaval already in the building. So here we are a month later. As we talked about, this is a big picture conversation. So let's dive into this. And there is a big difference, I think, in this conversation between should he be on the hot seat and will he be on the hot seat?
It's like the Doug Peterson framework by Jeffrey Lurie. He didn't deserve to be fired.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we can agree that 3 years of Nick Sirianni, the Eagles have exceeded expectations. He has done, on the whole, a very good job. 2021, fantastic. Like the flower analogy and taking them from what seemed like a terrible start, what was a terrible start, and as a coach, being humble enough to like take away the responsibilities of calling the game, change the offensive style, led them to the playoffs. Great job. Last year, you got the offseason improvements, and boy, did he like maximize everything about that team to an impossible degree, right? Like we can talk about how like all of these narratives get shaped by these small margins. As you like to say, every week is a season. Every season is even a bit of a small fluky sample size, right? Like if the referees are a little bit less litigious, the Bengals are Super Bowl champions and the Rams went all in and failed, If they don't throw a flag on James Bradbury and Jalen Hurts leads the Eagles down for a game-winning touchdown, here we are a year later, they're Super Bowl champions.
If they kick an onside kick.
If they kick an onside kick, there you go. If they pull the Gannon. So, but those narratives are also real things in the building, right?
Sure.
And so the way that things have gone over this season, they were 10-1. Now all of a sudden things are not going so well. We know that there was people in the coaching staff, whether that was Nick's decision alone or influenced by people above him or made in part because he was worried about the reaction from people above him to the way things were going. Not suggestive of longevity, as I have said. We know that there is stuff going on in the locker room. A.J. Brown is going to talk today, and you know, there are reports that he is unhappy with things in the offense. There was the Derek Gunn report from that same day we first had this conversation. Like, these things are real. And so if things go as they could go, and they lose in the first round of the playoffs on the road to some bad NFC South team, my expectation is that will lead to the kinds of difficult conversations between Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni that they had with Doug Peterson in 2020. Remember, as you have said, Doug Peterson was not fired right away. They said he's coming back, and then a week later, they decide that he is being fired. There are going to be conversations about, how do we fix this? Mm-hmm. What is the plan forward? And if Nick Sirianni, who we know is a person who thinks that he deserves credit for things and has bristled at tough criticism in the past, right, and did earlier this month, if those conversations don't go well and they don't see eye to eye on what the path forward is, then I don't think that it is crazy to think that this could lead to a parting of the ways.
Crazy, no, considering that this is a real topic.
And I also want to say, if that happens, it is a terrible reflection of the organization, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, is that Nick Sirianni should not be fired. He should not be on the hot seat. He's taken a team that was 4-12 the year before he got here to the postseason 3 straight years. The Super Bowl the second year, double-digit wins, back-to-back seasons. This has gone bad. I mean, I can tell you what Mike Tomlin's year of the year after the Super Bowl was. I can tell you about John Harbaugh not making the playoffs in 4 or 5 years, right? I think there has to be a degree of consistency in action too. The Doug Peterson dismissal made sense to me, given the in hindsight, frankly, given the inflection point that the organization was in. And I thought the way Jeffrey Lurie explained it at that time made a lot of sense. That after the season that they had, for Doug to kind of keep his job, he would need to maximize that 2021 season. And the Eagles needed to kind of take a little bit of a reset. And so there was incongruencies in terms of those timelines. That's not the case with the Eagles right now. Their trajectory and Nick Sirianni's trajectory, I struggle to get that out, are in conjunction with one another.
Or should be. So to me, it would be ridiculous. It would be a poor reflection of the organization. It would be a poor decision. The only way, and frankly, I don't know if you're going to hire a coach who positions you to be better. The only way that I think you can consider such a move is if your confidence in his ability to lead the team has eroded to the point that you no longer think he should be the head coach. But that takes a high degree of confidence in your ability to assess that, to make that determination, because often, you know, there are troubles in friendships, there are troubles in marriages, and oftentimes you can patch them up, right? Like there's a difference between things being irreconcilable and things being able to be fixed. And whatever's going on in this Eagles locker room and with this team right now, my guess is it can be fixed with coordinator change, with tinkering with personnel. The other thing I will add, and I don't mean to make this a monologue here, is you just paid your quarterback to be your franchise guy. That factors into it too. If his confidence
in Nick Sirianni has eroded, then that would create action. I have no indication that's occurred to this point.
Yeah, I agree. And when we had this conversation initially, the point I made was that of the three most important people in the organization, Howie Roseman, Jalen Hurts, and Nick Sirianni,
Yes.
Sirianni is the one with the least stability, right? Like those other two guys aren't going anywhere. You talk about high confidence in their ability to assess these things. I think one thing we know about Howie Roseman is that he has high confidence in his ability. I think that, like, if you were to give him truth serum about who was most responsible for last season's success, I think he would say himself. And I think,
and he might not be wrong.
no, of course.
Yeah.
Now, this is part of a larger Howie conversation. I think a lot of the things that make Howie a great general manager relative to the rest of the league, like, the league is designed to bring everybody to the middle, right?
Yes.
And so there is no skeleton key. This is the right way to do it. Everything you do has some kind of negative downside, and like the maximizing at all costs to try to win right now sometimes comes back to bite him,
Yes.
as it has done in the roster they have built this year. Separately, my understanding is part of the reason the Eagles thought that they downslid after 2017 is that they got a little bit too complacent, right? And so my understanding is this offseason was very much like, we need to be as like aggressive and tightened up and battening down the hatches as much as possible, and we will accept no backslide. And if that is the case,
I would disagree. That's the reason, but sure, go on. I don't think complacency is why they slipped.
I would absolutely disagree
Yes.
that is
Yeah.
the reason, but my understanding is that is part of what they
I
thought.
think that's very much the way Howie operates too. Yeah.
Right. So that if that is the case, then like there is no allowance for, this is really hard. It is really hard to go to the Super Bowl and lose and have a good season then next year. There's a reason that doesn't happen very often. For all of the like physical ramifications, like the playing late into the season, the shorter off season, for all of the emotional ramifications of, okay, these guys sacrificed so much and they still didn't make it to the mountaintop. Are they going to be willing to sacrifice as much moving forward? Are they going to be affected by the expectations? All of those things are very real, and like history has borne that out. All of those things are very difficult. So if the Eagles go 12-5 and lose in the first round, that's better than most Super Bowl losing teams do, but that's not going to be like good enough for Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie. The real thing that we don't know, without being in the building, that we cannot know, is like how much of the personality conflicts are at play here, whether that is between the front office and the coaching staff, whether it's between the coaching staff and the players. If those things are very significant, then that is what would lead to change, I think. And to your point, like, the players matter more than the coach probably. And this is not like, coaches are not linebackers or safeties to Howie Roseman, but they're also not wide receivers and quarterbacks and offensive linemen, right? Like, they are replaceable to some degree. And so, like, you're not changing the roster wholesale. If a change needs to be made, I think it is more likely to come. And I think it is much more likely that it's going to be changes to the coaching staff, not Nick Sirianni. But if there was a real butting of the heads, and Nick Sirianni deserves to be proud and confident in his ability to fix things, but also, like, if he is thinking, I can fix this, and they don't agree about what it is, he might think he can go do it somewhere else, and he doesn't have to deal with this nonsense. It is not just a one-way street.
And that's been a sentiment in the past, frankly. You bring up a valid point. I don't think that the organization, the way it is run, is built for the stability you're talking about. I think there is there is an acceptance of, drama is not the right word, but like, to some degree, I think there is like competition produces results to some degree. Well, I would agree with that.
Right. But like this is an organization that is much more like, it's sort of like Sirianni's personality, where it's like up and down, up and down. It's not like the Steelers going 9-8 every season. And as a fan, that's probably better to have the highs and the lows. But I don't think that this is an organization that is built or wants to be 10-7 every season.
No, not at all. But that would be my counter, is that they're not 10-7 every season, right? Like Nick Sirianni went 13-4 last year. He's presumably going to go 12-5.
Sure, that's better.
At least.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
I mean, there are now. I know I run into trouble on this show when I say there are X amount of organizations who would kill for that position, because and rightfully so. Those watching at home don't care about the X amount of organizations. They care about the Eagles, right? And that's part of this. But I keep going back to this. You need to make an assessment. Are you changing because you're mad, or are you changing because it's productive, right? And if you're changing because you're mad, then shame on you, because that's not the way you operate. I never think, oh, the team struggled down the stretch, so we need to find someone to blame. Someone to blame is not how you produce results. Something to fix is how you produce results. So you do need to have confidence in Nick Sirianni's ability to fix this, to fix what has happened during the past month. In particular, I would say the past 3 weeks, right? Because, like I said, they lost to two real good teams. When we had that conversation, they were 10-3. I thought it was premature then. The way they've played these past 3 weeks is alarming given what occurred before then. And so you need to have an idea, in particular, I think, on your coaching staff and defensive coordinator and scheme. And Howie's part of this too, defensive personnel, the decisions that you make there. What's your path forward fixing what is wrong? And if you have disagreements on that path, then this is a conversation. But to me, one of the worst things you can do if you're in Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman's position here is to say, we're mad, this is unacceptable, and so therefore there needs to be a change. Because is the person coming in going to be better? Is that person better able to suit it? Are you just looking for a scapegoat there? Frankly, to me, that's why there's a new defensive play caller here, because things were bad and you were looking for something different.
But don't you think that's indicative of their thinking? That, like, if it is the case that there is a lot of finger pointing going on and they needed a scapegoat, they've already done it. They've already tried it once and it totally backfired.
At defense, yeah. And that's what I'm saying. That to me would be ridiculous, would be a poor way to run an organization, would be a poor path forward. I thought the way Jeffrey Lurie explained the Doug Peterson dismissal made sense from an organizational perspective, not from like a human perspective, right? But it's what I was talking about. That was a decision not made looking for a scapegoat. That was a decision based on a plan, and they had a plan going forward, and there were differences of opinion.
They wanted to rebuild.
Exactly.
And Doug was not the coach for a rebuild.
Yes. And so
as they explained it, which is... Yeah.
So the best way I could say this is, if this is a conversation that's being had or that could be had in the building because they're mad that they're losing right now and they're looking for someone to blame, and it's easier to blame the coach than it is the GM and the quarterback, then to me, shame on you. But if it gets to a point after the season where they say we need X, Y, and Z to fix this, and Nick Sirianni says, no, we need A, B, C to fix this, and there's incongruency there, then okay, maybe I can understand it. But I think Nick Sirianni's a really good coach. I think he's proven that. I disagree with those who say that he doesn't call plays and his assistant coaches aren't working well and his game management has been questionable. So therefore, what is he doing here? Because to me, a lot of being a head coach too is being a leader, is being a CEO of an organization, right? And you oversee a group of 30 staff members and 70 players and 69 players in particular. I
didn't say anything.
I was just being precise. And that is like there's so much on your plate as a head coach. It's much more than who you're hiring as the coordinator, how you're managing the game. But that is a part of it. And I think the game management stuff, he's done it well in the past, and you can work on that. So,
well, I think that is part of it. To your point, though, like as you have said in making the case before that he doesn't get enough credit because he is not a play caller, his job is to be the head coach of the football team. If that's the case, and the vibes are bad, and the coaching of the coaches is not going very well, then that isn't a good reflection on him.
Yeah.
And the game management stuff, it is like very far from the top of the list of his most important responsibilities. But it has been bad.
Yeah.
And if you think about the things that we know Howie and Jeffrey care about, having an efficient, creative offense on the vanguard of innovation.
Sure.
That is not this offense. They're very good, but it seems to be a player-driven success, right? A lot of it is individual routes on the outside with Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. The fact that they are dead last in the league in motion, this stuff, I don't think that they would like that. That he has not been aggressive in in-game situations, following what the analytics would say is not great. And I think that they would probably push back on that in the offseason. You need to do a better job there.
Well, I agree with that.
So some of those things, they are already at odds with each other. The defensive line rotation, I'm still trying to make sense of that, because the only difference there was Desai. If it was the case that was Desai, then maybe that was the reason for the scapegoating. But boy, has that totally backfired. And it's sort of in line with some of the other push our chips in now type things. But I think it leads to difficult conversations, and I don't know what the results of those conversations will be. And they have to have those. I mean, that's the job, right?
Yeah, that is the job. And so I paused here because I believe fundamentally you need to make hard decisions in football and work and life, but you shouldn't make emotional decisions. You should make decisions that are based on reason and not based on emotion.
But if they also have, like you said, they shouldn't make these emotional decisions, that is true. But if they have come to the conclusion that he is not the guy for them, then it's also not great to give him another year because you think he earned it.
Yeah, there's a great quote from, I believe, Jeremy Foley, the former athletic director at Florida, said it, but it came from, I believe, a general before that, and that's, whatever must be done eventually should be done immediately. And the point being that if there's something that you're going to do, you might as well just do it. But I would disagree with the premise of it.
It's hard to do, when you respond to a text message, oh God, if I don't do it right this second, it might be weeks before I respond to this.
What's that in reference to?
Nothing, just my daily life.
Oh, really? Is that a joke about me, or is that
no?
Okay.
No, it's a joke about me. If you don't get me responding to this text right away, I might forget about it.
Well, the trouble I run into is, and I've said this on our previous podcast, or
emails. God forbid responding to an email. Oh God!
But when something comes while I'm driving, and I have Sheila in my head saying, "Don't be on your phone when you're driving," and so Sheila gave me this advice, when you park, spend 10 minutes just responding to texts and emails that come. But I haven't necessarily been doing that, so sometimes you get a backlog of texts when you're driving. And that's what
big flex.
I might forget. Is that a big flex? I feel as if that's a common thing now. How many texts?
You're getting deluged by texts. You're so popular.
How many? Don't you get a lot of texts?
I don't know, but I don't feel like it's a brag-worthy amount of texts.
I wasn't bragging about it. I was simply having the conversation. Let's talk about our wonderful sponsors. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
This morning, I made a little breakfast taco for Casey and Rachel, and had a couple bites of my own.
You know what?
Typically, I'm I'm just eating the scraps of the breakfast I've made for everybody else.
Gotcha. I did not eat breakfast this morning.
Okay.
I probably should have. But as I'm thinking about it now, you know what would have been a perfect breakfast for me?
Yes, I do. Cocaine.
Huge bagels. The biggest bagels in Philly. I'm talking about Bagels & Co. These are very large, hence the Brooklyn, New Jersey style bagels. They're and if I can be overwhelmed by choices sometimes. I look at a menu and I'm like, do I want A, B, or C? Bagels & Co. I'm overwhelmed by the choices. 15 to 20 different types to choose from daily. They have seasonal bagels as well. They have They had Christmas flavored bagels during Christmas season. They also have a large cream cheese variety, 30 different flavors. So you can mix and match. This is like Oregon's uniforms. Okay, we have they have staples during the seasons. They have they have cream cheese for your favorite sports teams. I imagine those watching the Eagles would love their Eagles cream cheese. You can check out their Instagram to see the visuals, and they're an affordable brand, right? So you're getting quality food at a good price, which in today's inflationary world is key. They've debated raising their prices, but they want an everyday brand that's not just some place that you splurge on the weekends to go. And I was looking at their website recently, the bagelsandco.com/store locator. These things are popping up everywhere. It's great to see. So if you want to know that for the best Brooklyn-style bagels made right here in Philly, head to www.thebagelsandco.com/store locator to find the closest Bagels & Co. near you.
And if you want to join Zach in making the drive up 95 on Sunday to watch this beleaguered Eagles team try to scrape together a victory to close the regular season, you could do it by buying your tickets on Game Time, because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. They've got, you know what they've got? They've got flash deals and last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. Images of seat views, lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. I was scrolling through Game Time this morning looking for some like weekend day games for the Flyers or Sixers that might be
Martin Luther King Day.
Martin Luther King Day. I saw that. Might be trying to purchase one myself. We'll see with the kids. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. Just
2 taps.
2 taps and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Tickets make great holiday gifts, great New Year's gifts for all the New Year's heads out there. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHLY for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code PHLY for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
I do have a question for you regarding the coach changing discussion. You've been around here for the turn of Andy Reid. You weren't here for the turn of Chip Kelly, but you were in tune with the organization and certainly the change in Doug Peterson. How do you think they handled those? Like, do you think did you agree with the decisions when they made it for those 3?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the Doug is the only one that makes me hesitate.
Okay.
Andy was clear, and I think you could make the case that Andy was a lesson to Jeffrey in maybe he waited a year too long.
I don't know if that was Andy's lesson, or if Jeffrey's lesson from Andy.
What do you think his lesson was?
Well,
he should have waited longer?
Yeah, I actually think that I think Jeffrey would have loved if
You're smiling because you might be giving something away from a book that could be coming out one day.
I think that Jeffrey has like a world of respect for Andy Reid, and
no doubt about that.
No, and like probably wishes that was something that could have been. I'll put it this way: there were a lot of other circumstances at play that year that I think contributed to that.
Yeah, but I also
do think time ran its course.
I think time ran. I don't think that Andy would have had the success in Philadelphia. I mean, Patrick Mahomes aside, like I think Andy needed a fresh start
he
too.
Needed a reset. Okay. Yeah. I
could be wrong about that, but I sort of think that's the case. Now, I do think though that Jeffrey Lurie in his mind would like to be the kind of franchise that has a head coach for 15 years, right? He wants
like Howie.
He wants that stability, right? But since Andy, this is coach number 3 in like the same amount of time that they had Andy the first time. It could be number 4 at some point.
Does it strike you that this is a ridiculous conversation or no? Like that? Like I could be wrong.
It strikes me that the idea is ridiculous.
Okay, yeah, that's what.
Yeah, I do think it's ridiculous to think that the head coach who led them to the Super Bowl last year could be fired. I think that's crazy. I agree.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Please go with the other.
No, but I don't think it's ridiculous in the context of what is happening with the team right now and what we know about the organization.
Yeah. And that's what, so I didn't mean to cut you off. You were talking about Chip and Doug.
Oh, and so, I mean, I think the timing on Chip was precisely correct.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the timing on Doug was, you could have done something else there, but certainly it turned out to be correct.
So the reason I'm saying this still strikes me as such a ridiculous conversation, and it's more. I'm not even discussing us having the conversation. How this has become part of the conversation around the Eagles, because this isn't. I think we were in front of it on that show, but I think that what we're doing now is just having our ear to what is being discussed among fans, right? And that's the part of it that I'm fascinated. This has reached that point when I read our comments, and I do read our comments on our shows,
to the detriment of your physical personal health.
And it says like fire Sirianni. I see it once or twice, and I'm like, you know what? That's just a fan that's angry that they lost. Okay, but then when it's the day after, and it's the day after that, right? 2 days removed from the game, and you don't have that emotion. Or at least I assume people still don't have that emotion. And that's the response to it. It strikes me, am I too anchored by resume? Am I too anchored by...
in general, yes, but I don't know if that's the case in this situation.
Am I too anchored by the notion that here's a coach who has been to the playoffs all 3 years, went to the Super Bowl year 2, double-digit wins in year 3? Like, what am I missing? And I'm not blind or oblivious to the organizational dynamics that can occur after a season when you do have this type of collapse. And I saw a story from Ruben Frank yesterday where it was basically saying like this is unprecedented to be 10-1 team and to be in the situation that they're in now where you lose 4 or 5 games. Right, this is like without precedent in the NFL.
Just like they were without precedent at 10-1 with such a low point differential. Yeah.
Which is another conversation, by the way, that 2 things off that. Number one, as Rich Hoffman wrote in his newsletter yesterday, it shows what you said all along, that the teams don't know how to win. That's like a myth. When you keep winning close games, it's not like you know how to win. Just like last year, you don't know how to force turnovers better. Eventually, if you keep winning close games, you're going to lose close games, or you're going to lose those games, right? That's why point differential matters. And the second part, Rich Hoffman's newsletter is awesome. I was reading it this morning.
Hard agree.
And he does, like, there's not, I'm not just saying this because I work here. I'm not just saying this because John Gonzalez wrote it. There's not a better newsletter in the city that you can find that gives you an update on what's going on these teams. And so make sure it's free.
What does John Gonzalez have to do with this?
John Gonzalez tweeted that out, remember?
Oh, he wrote that Rich's is the best.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that. I don't think I saw
he wrote
that.
highly recommend Rich's.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Letter. Yeah. So, and
shout out to Gonzo.
Yeah. And Gonzo's awesome. I
missed the tweet. I'm sorry.
I think he wrote that. If he didn't, I still give a shout out to Gonzo for being Gonzo. But
whose basketball team is doing better right now?
My team. Yeah.
Are we talking like top of the league? Your team right now?
5th place right now.
Oof.
So
he's buried. And
I'm getting some like aggressive trade offers from some really good podcast hosts from competing or from other shows, and I'm trying to lay low right now.
Ira Glass?
No, trying to lay low right now because I don't want to give up future assets right now, and I think the price is too high.
Okay,
but I imagine there's going to be a striking point at some point where we can find a mutually. You hope you get to a point in the season where the playoffs are close enough that it can benefit me, but also they're not going to get a better deal somewhere else for an expiring contract for a player they're not going to keep, right? So I just went into too many details.
It's okay. I love the machinations of the trade discussions between you and Mark Maron.
No, the really loyal Sixers listeners will know who I'm speaking about. I'll put it that way. That's a little Easter egg for the Sixers listeners.
Okay. I do think that the assessing Nick Sirianni's performance this season, divorced from whether or not he should retain the job, which I think we agree that without knowing what's actually going on behind the scenes, he probably should.
Without a doubt.
The framing that he uses, which I think is the appropriate framing, and it's the framing that the players care about the most, and it's probably why A.J. Brown is upset, is, are you making the players better? Like, can you get me better?
Yes.
And right now, it is hard to look at the roster and believe that they are being maximized. The defense is obviously underperforming relative to its talent level.
Do you think so?
I don't think it was a perfectly constructed defense. That's a different conversation. But are they underperforming? Yeah. I mean, they're like 28th in DVOA. They've got this like super highly paid defensive line that stinks.
Yeah.
And yeah, they are definitely underperforming. How could you argue otherwise?
Well, no, I agree with what you're saying. The reason that I'm hesitating is, do you think they look at this and they say this is a personnel issue, that this defense is actually performing like a defense that has bad linebackers and bad, that
I think their personnel is a like 20th best defense. I don't think it's a like worst third down defense in the history of the league, basically.
Fair. Okay.
Like
so keep going.
And the offense, 8th in the league. That is underperforming, like given all the talent they have. They've been a very healthy team for the second year in a row. That's not good enough. And I think from the if we are changing the focus into like what can they do over the next month to maximize their performance, I think it is more likely that the defense or that the offense takes a bump from 8th best to like truly elite than it is that the defense is going to be fixed and be mediocre all of a sudden. I think the defense is a lost cause aside from hoping you get some turnover luck, basically. And maybe the defensive line gets a little bit healthier. Yeah. That's why I think I would rest those guys. Like, that's your only shot in the playoffs is if for some reason those guys get their legs back. But from are you making the players better? Are you maximizing their performance? I don't think you could argue that they are at this point, especially the second half of the season.
So the counter to that is A.J. Brown's going to have the best season of his career this year, right? On offense, they're going to have presumably a 4,000-yard passer, near 4,000-yard passer, 1,000-yard rusher, 2,000-yard receivers, right? They're going to have – and Sirianni mainly oversees the offense. He would tell you that. The defense is a little different. I don't think Sirianni's making the defense better, and that's where – but I don't know if Sirianni's tasked with making the defense better. And that's why the defensive coordinator is so important here. And the biggest hire that Sirianni made when he got the job was Gannon. This past offseason was Desai. And then the biggest decision that he's made by far as a head coach has been making that change from Desai to Patricia. And that has not worked out. So this offseason, what you got to...
I mean, you could argue the biggest decision was
giving up play calling?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. I mean, both major midseason changes.
So... and
thank God Jonathan Gannon suggested that.
Hey man, Gannon,
he's living high right now, and he can do no wrong.
Look,
except for maybe in the eyes of the Bidwells.
Yeah, maybe so. They probably would prefer to loss there, but
what are you doing, Jonathan?
I think all the people who are ripping on Gannon last week might be pulling crow out of their mouth a bit. So. We definitely don't need to go down that rabbit hole, though.
Yeah, let's table that.
Yeah, let's avoid that conversation. So,
I would like a gif of pulling crow out of their mouth. It's funny.
So here you go. In the offseason here, or a few days after the season, whenever this ends. And by the way, I should also make an important note here to those watching. This is like telling me how a movie's going to end or could end 80% of the way through. The playoffs are a big part of this. The Eagles are going. They have a home playoff. They'll have a road playoff game, presumably against Tampa. If they win that.
By the way, Deniz told me they cannot be the 3 seed. I think we had mentioned that possibility yesterday.
Interesting.
They can only be the 2 or the 5.
Yeah, okay. So the interesting. So they would be better than the Lions no matter what.
Yes.
Okay. Professor Zellman, that's why you're the man. Much appreciated. So, and I wish he told me that too. He could have. This is like you, Coach Flynn, and Shield Tech. I feel
he's texting you on the side too. You told me he's giving you question suggestions.
Oh, Professor Selman. Yeah.
Okay.
He's making me his conduit to the coach.
Yeah.
Right. So a few days after the season, whenever it ends, and let's say for the
by the way, you're now on a mutual text chain.
I know, I love
Flynn.
it. This is so cool. I'm pumped. I'm honored. I now feel like Shield.
He's giving you Tommy Reese shade. Your boy.
Yeah, didn't like that play call. So
new Eagles offensive coordinator Tommy Reese.
If Sirianni had his druthers, perhaps.
Yeah.
So a few days after the season, for the sake of conversation, it ends in the first game because we're talking about if this collapses, right? That was the premise of it. And they say you need a defensive overhaul. You need a new coordinator. You need a scheme change.
And I do think it's important to say, we've said this before, but from a defensive coaching staff standpoint, they didn't just lose Jonathan Gannon. They also lost Nick Rallis and Denard Wilson, right? Like they had to backfill several of those things late in the hiring cycle. I would not be surprised if there is a major coaching overhaul on that staff, regardless of what happens.
So Sirianni says, I want this person, okay? And then the Eagles say, no, I want you to have Brandon Staley. I don't know. I'm just picking
John Carroll, are you kidding me? I quit.
Yeah. And so there's a disagreement there. I suppose where this could reach Peterson-esque is if there's a disagreement in terms of the composition of the staff. If Sirianni says, look, I've won. I made the playoffs 3 years in a row. I was trying to do the math quickly in my head, but I've won nearly 40 games as a head coach. I should be able to pick my own defensive coordinator.
This is pure speculation. Mm-hmm. Completely just guessing. My guess is that his disagreement or bristling would come much more on offensive changes. I'm guessing that if they say we need a total defensive overhaul, he's not going to argue.
Fine,
how could he argue? They were terrible on defense this year. I think it's much more likely if they're like, you need some fresh eyes on offense, like get a motion doctor in here. And he's like, I'm running my offense. That is the end of the story. That is where they could butt heads.
Well, that's happened one time during my time covering the team in 2020, and it was disastrous.
Yeah.
It was disastrous because Jeffrey Lurie and, well, I don't want to say it, whoever it was, whether it was Howie or Jeffrey in the front office, there was a fascination with what San Francisco was doing, and the league was fascinated with what San Francisco was doing. And they had Doug Peterson bring in Scangarello, and it turned into this, I don't even know what the offense was that year. They said COVID. They didn't really have a chance to install it.
They said COVID. But nobody used COVID as an excuse more than the Eagles.
Yeah, seriously.
Crazy.
Yeah. Anyways, tell me about...
No, go ahead. Finish your...
Yeah, so... I agree with you there. That Sirianni takes pride in his offense. He would tell you that he's hired here to fix the offense or to be an offensive coach, to have an offensive system. So if they say, you need to run the offense the way Mike McDaniel's running his offense, well, that's ridiculous, right? That's almost like a shot across the bow of Sirianni.
All right. I'll tell you about FOCO because FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and more. They've got the best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms. It's football and tailgating season. They've got overalls, hoodies, hats, sunglasses, bags, everything you need for a game. FOCO has hooked PHLY up and provided awesome pieces for our sets. FOCO always has our back for Philly sports, and they have yours too. Get the best gear around by using the link in our description. For all non-presale items, use the promo code PHLY10 for 10% off. Zach, do you think Jeffrey Lurie would hire Bill Belichick?
No. I don't think Bill Belichick's coming here either. So, but I think Bill Belichick's going to be an interesting coach somewhere next year. Washington, maybe.
Is there any meat left on this bone? Anything else to ring out here?
Well, it's theoretical right now, and
let's say they lose by. This is the question I was on the Around the NFL podcast yesterday.
For flex this and a half.
Monster flex. This
Look
is
at that. Greg with 2 G's.
This
or 3 G's.
This is the Sirianni question. Like this is what they wanted to talk about.
Really?
And the question was posed to me: if they if they lose by 2 touchdowns in Tampa, right? And it blows up and there's like, bickering on the sidelines, all that stuff. How many turkeys are you putting on Sirianni's return? Purely theoretical.
65.
On his return?
Yes.
Okay.
You? My voice cracked.
I said 40.
You think there's a less
if it is that bad.
If it's that bad.
If it is like they're fighting on the sidelines and they get blown out in that game, then yes.
Wow.
That's not me saying what should happen. That's what I think would happen.
And when Bo talks, I know to listen. So that's interesting. Man, I gotta go watch that sidelining at Tampa.
See if Jalen shows up in a walking boot again.
Yeah. Well, so you brought that up here, and I am curious your view on this part of it. We keep framing it like this is Jeffrey and Howie's call. Okay. At what point do you think this becomes Jalen's call? Or do you think that matters? Do you think that's relevant?
I'm glad you brought that up because I do think that is an important thing here. Like, I don't think you want to set the precedent that the locker room gets to decide when a coach is done, right? I think it is important for like long-term health of the organization to have somebody in place who is the person no matter what and can steer the ship. And they need to know whether that is Nick or not. But we have talked about this over the years. Like Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni is such an odd mix, right? Like this is like Mr. Sabanism, Mr. Steady, like no pulse. The meme that you've written about where he's the same no matter what happens is the complete opposite of Nick Sirianni, right? And so, and the roster is built with guys like that, Devontae Smith among them. And they've like tried to pick guys from those from those
AJ
college programs. AJ is like the classic wide receiver tweet meme. I think Denny Carter, who had that tweet, an enemy walks silently, carries whatever, all that stuff. So like, I think that Nick and Jalen have a good relationship from everything I understand, but they are an odd mix. And if it came down to it that like Jeffrey brought in Jalen and was like, what do you think here? And Jalen was like, oh, it doesn't matter to me. I don't know. I think his voice would carry weight. That's all I think.
Yes. And I think Jalen's voice definitely carries weight in that organization. And what's interesting to me about that is when the Carson thing ended, I remember the question that I asked Howie was, if it gets to this point again, where you have a franchise quarterback, how will you do it differently, or will you do it differently? And I think they all, from their perspective, you want to empower your players, and you want and certainly, and I say this, I don't mean to bring money involved in it, or involve money in it.
It's like an NBA team, right?
But yeah, when you pay look, there's a reason why quarterbacks get paid $250 million and coaches and GMs don't get paid $250 million.
Don't get me started on those GM salaries.
Because it is harder to find a franchise quarterback than it is to find a great head coach. It's harder to find a franchise quarterback than it is to find a great GM. Sorry, Jerry Krause. Sorry, Thomas Dimitroff. Right?
And also like it's harder to find, and also the difference between the 5th best quarterback and the 20th best quarterback is so much greater and so much more significant than the difference between the 5th best GM and the 20th best GM, when there's so much luck involved in that anyway.
Yeah, and that's why I say Jalen Hurts' voice matters here. And I imagine that for the next 3 to 5 years in this organization, and perhaps thereafter, next 5 to 8 years, if they're lucky, next 10 to 12 years, Jalen Hurts' voice matters. And so whenever this is framed, what are Jeffrey and Howie going to do? Because we've operated during the past 6 years in particular, or 8 or 7 years in particular. What are Jeffrey and Howie going to do? But you have to say, what are Jeffrey, Howie, and Jalen going to do? Because I think Jalen's part of that partnership. And you're getting to a point now where it's Jeffrey, Howie, Jalen, and Julian. What are Jeffrey, Howie, Jalen, and Julian going to do?
And even if it's
too
not,
bad Howie doesn't have a J name. That would have been
I think that's true, but I don't think they're bringing in Jalen to be part of the decision-making process.
Okay.
As much. I think they will value his opinion, but I think it's also just as much the thing we talked about before. I'm paying Jalen Hurts this amount of money. Yeah. Are you making him better? Are you giving me the return of investment that I need from that? And that's the question that they have to answer.
Yeah, good point.
Last thing before we go, and we'll probably continue this conversation as the week goes on, because I'm sure other things will pop up in our minds. But AJ Brown tweeting last night he's going to talk today.
Can't wait. Get your popcorn ready.
Alert the masses. Here we go. What do you make of the AJ Brown of it all here?
Yeah, so I might have an opinion that's different than some people who might have disagreements with AJ Brown. AJ Brown's a special player, like a beyond special. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He's the best wide receiver that this organization has had at least since Terrell Owens, and an argument could be made ever.
How dare you?
Mike Quick?
Harold Carmichael, come on.
Yeah. T.O. is that good. Oh, I'm sorry. T.O. was.
Wow.
AJ Brown is that good. And if there's some emotional tendencies that come with it, so be it. I don't think where AJ Brown is, and you talked about this on the show, bringing up Devontae Adams, and it's a good point. I think AJ Brown, where he's coming from here, is he wants to be the one who makes a difference. He's not saying,
because he knows he can.
Exactly. And I want people like that. So I keep hearing AJ Brown's a diva. AJ Brown is a darn good player. Look at the Tennessee Titans now. Look at the Tennessee Titans 2 years ago. Okay? Do you think they miss AJ Brown? The organization moved mountains to try to figure out how they can fix this wide receiver position. They spent money. They did draft picks. They made trades. They finally have AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. They should be counting their lucky stars every night that they have a 25 and a 23, 24-year-old wide receiver who they can build around here. I would, whatever baggage comes with AJ Brown, I would gladly accept it because he is that good, and I would do more to maximize it. I put a tweet out, your bingo card there,
26 and 25,
the other day, where I said I wouldn't try to worry about why AJ Brown is. I wouldn't worry about a player's reaction more than I would worry about the plan that caused that reaction. Like why is this happening? Not how can we make AJ Brown feel better? Why is he feeling this way in the first place? Why are we having a system that's giving the ball to Kenny Gainwell as much as AJ Brown during a game that you lose? So to me, God bless you. So to me, I would look at this and say, let's figure this out. And my view on the AJ Brown situation is he's that good a player.
I think that's all correct. I think we talked about this before the show. We had the conversation, I think, in the summer about like who's more likely to be here long term, AJ Brown or Devontae Smith. It's my opinion that the answer is Devontae Smith, because we've seen AJ Brown like be discontented before, and there's a chance that it could happen again. I kind of think that as like AJ Brown is a better player right now than Devontae Smith is. If I could have one guy for one game, it would be AJ Brown. But long term, I would rather have Devontae Smith. And I think that he is probably the most underutilized player on the team right now.
That's a good point.
I think they could use a lot more Devontae Smith. That said, they've been trying to solve that position for a long time. They need to keep both of those guys, and it's part of the reason that they didn't bring in another wide receiver in the offseason, which I think was a mistake, but they were very concerned about those personality dynamics. It's the same as the Jalen Hurts thing. Like, are you maximizing what we are paying for in AJ Brown right now? As he is having a career season, still the answer is probably not.
No, that's the thing. And a lot of that production came during a stretch when the offense was at its best this year. And I think part of the reason they were at its best is because A.J. Brown was playing that way. A.J. Brown's a force multiplier. Make it work with him. Make him happy.
What do you think he's going to say today?
Good question. I think he's going to say that he just wants to win, that he's doing whatever it takes to win, that...
you want to do a little role play real quick?
Am I AJ or am I the
You're
reporter?
AJ.
Well, I'll be the reporter. You'll be AJ. Or do you want me to be AJ? No.
You be AJ. You get to be a reporter every day. I want to pretend to be a reporter.
Okay. All right. I mean, I'm not jacked enough to be AJ, but okay.
Close enough.
That's the only difference between you. Okay.
AJ, why have you been so upset lately? Ooh, good AJ. Good AJ.
Yeah. For the audio
breath,
listeners,
yeah.
I looked up and I smiled. Guys, what you have to understand about me is I just want to win. I just want to win so bad. And it's all love for my teammates. It's all love for my coaches. But I just really want to win. And I feel that I can help the team win. And when we're losing, I get frustrated.
Do you feel like the offense is maximizing? Do you think the offense is creative enough?
I run the plays that are called, and I believe in our coaches. I've known, Coach Nick's been very good for me, and I've known Brian Johnson since I was 14 years old, and he was in my living room when he was at Mississippi State. So I'm just gonna speak in my voice here because I can't do.
Yeah,
I can't do like you
voice,
do. Yeah, I was trying to. I've known Brian Johnson since he was since I was 14 years old. I have a great relationship with Nick. I spoke to him yesterday. I just want to win, but I'm not the play caller. I just run the plays that are called.
What was that conversation with Nick like?
Oh, me and Nick are cool. We're good. We're both on the same page. We just want to win.
What kind of deodorant do you wear?
I wear Secret Women's deodorant. Is
That's
that
right,
the?
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Good job. You really got in there.
Yes.
All right. Well, we'll find out tomorrow what AJ Brown said today. And we've got 2 more shows this week. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., Friday at 3:30 p.m. with the professor, Daniz, joining us once again. Good discussion today. You feel good about that?
I feel good whenever we have these talks. Yeah.
Not last time.
Well, not last time. That's true. That's true. I didn't dislike having the conversation with you. I just thought it was a ridiculous conversation to have.
Well,
but it is better. It's always better to be early than it is to be late. It's like, you want to get on the stock when it's low, not when everyone else is buying it, right? So,
stock maven himself, Zach Berman, buy that Apple stock and buy the AJ Brown stock. What's your Eagles stock right now? Eagles stock tip.
Hold. Don't be over leveraged in it, but hold.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question before we close.
Yes. Last question.
Let's pretend that Matt Patricia is the official defensive coordinator. Let's pretend that that's his title.
Sure.
How many of the head coach / coordinators of those 3 are back next year?
Well, they're going to have a new defensive coordinator, I believe.
You don't think it'll be Patricia?
No, I don't believe it'll be Patricia.
You think just that?
And I think just that. I think Brian's going to be back unless he leaves on his own volition. I don't think they're going to fire Brian Johnson. I think they're going to look at their offensive numbers and say, "You guys are crazy, right?" They're still one of the top offenses in the league. Now, to your point, are they maximizing their talent? I get that, but it's going to be, they're going to say AJ Brown had the best season of his career. We have 2 1,000-yard wide receivers, a 1,000-yard running back, and a 4,000-yard quarterback.
We love Quez Watkins.
Well, no. Watch what they do, not what they say. But I think they'll probably add a 3rd receiver there, and there's going to be an interesting tight end conversation probably coming up soon as well.
Okay. All right. That'll do it for this episode of the PHLY Eagles podcast, jam-packed. Much to come tomorrow and Friday. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thank you for watching. For Julia and Zach, Happy New Year's once again. And as always, we love you.
We all silly like the mayor.